Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Equitus podcast. My name is Patrick Kinkoff, and today we have the founder and CEO of Equitus, who also happens to be a brigadier general in the Army Reserve. Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Guidry.
No one is ever alone. Not these days. Not with smartphones and video surveillance and social media being used 24/7. I wonder how much they know, how much they've seen. At Equitus, we believe you should own your digital future. This is the alternative. This is the future. This is Equitus.
Morning, Rob. Thanks for being on.
No, it's a pleasure.
So I've had the opportunity to work with you for about 2 years. The things that come to mind, first of all, are entrepreneur, innovation, and mentor. So you've told me a lot about your life, a lot about your career. What piqued my interest first was the Guidry family has a.
Well, we're certainly Cajuns, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting story.
Interesting, but on your 18th birthday, you have something that happens to every Guidry child. Can you tell me about leaving the nest?
Yeah, going back for generations, we've had a tradition in our family, which is that the parents provide the best possible support, education, the family environment that they can. Mm-hmm. But everybody knows that on your 18th birthday, you leave the home. You do not get support on the 18th birthday plus 1 day. So the fortunate thing is that you know it's coming. You know it's coming when you're 15. So you're busy planning for it on your 16th birthday and so on. I was the youngest of 7 children, so I had the opportunity to watch my older brothers and sisters do that. For me, mine was a little different in that when the last sibling left, I also left at the same time, and I was a couple of years ahead of being 18, but decided to move out on my own then.
So, how old were you?
I was actually 16.
Oh, wow.
And I was fortunate in that I worked as long as I can remember. I had a job, growing up on a farm. You work on the farm when you're 7 or 8. Then we had a pecan processing plant, and I worked in that from 8 through 10. By the time I was 10, I had a job sweeping floors at a department store. And by the time I was 12, 13, I was changing light fixtures rather high in the ceiling at a department store in a small town in Louisiana, unloading freight trucks and doing things like that. But at about 13, I discovered aviation, and it kind of became a passion for me. So the money that I would get from my salary from working, I would use to buy an hour of flight instruction. And I started doing that early on without my parents' consent. And by the time that I was 15, I had a lot of flight hours built and had learned to fuel little planes at a little airport in Louisiana. So for me, it was easy because when I decided to leave home, I had already been working fueling planes at a little airport. And so I sort of started spending more and more time there. And that sort of became my home while I finished high school.
So you said 16 years old, you've been refueling planes for a while, so you had that work ethic from a very young age. Do you think it was a benefit for you leaving earlier? Did that help you, or was that a hindrance to your development?
I think it was important that I knew what hard work looked like, because to me I would have felt out of place had there not been hard work required. It was something that we were just expected to do, and so I think it gave me a little bit of a sense of humility going forward that I think was an important part of a lot of decisions I've made throughout my life.
Like what?
Well, each time that I would come up with, I would find myself at a stumbling block. I was involved in a job I didn't really like. I was living someplace I didn't really want to be. I didn't mind taking what some people would classify as a really crappy job, whether it was working in the back washing dishes at a college cafeteria, or whether it was, I used to think they have this thing called the honey pot, which is the toilet.
The honey pot.
Yeah, it's called the honey pot. And somebody's got to empty that. Somebody's got to clean that stuff.
You were in charge of the blue stuff?
I was definitely in charge of the blue stuff, yes. But, I didn't mind doing it because I never thought to myself, well, this is what I'm going to do forever. It was always just a step along the way to what I really wanted, which was, for most of my life, it was a career in aviation.
And so was joining the military your step from going to these crappy jobs to being able to do something that you loved?
Yeah, I never considered myself as having a future life without the military. I always knew that, to me, I was raised as part of a culture where service is something you do. Everybody does a few years. It's just a part of a culture. And so I always knew that I was gonna serve in the military. I wanted to serve as a pilot. It did work out that way, but not exactly in that order. What happened for me was struggling to pay college tuition and struggling to live, and a little downturn in the economy, and I found myself really going, how the heck am I going to pay for everything? So I went down to a recruiter and enlisted. And at that point, I said, okay, I've set my aviation career back because being enlisted guys don't fly.
Right.
They fix airplanes. They maintain airplanes, they do air traffic control, they do a lot of things, but they don't fly. And I was very fortunate that my military career took such an unusual path. For instance, I showed up at basic training and was immediately pulled out of basic training and made a driver for the basic training company. So instead of having to go through all the training, I drove them around. Well, the reason was I already knew how to assemble and disassemble an M16. I already knew how to do so many of the things, so they didn't really require me to do that. And then when assignments came up, I enlisted to be a clerk typist. I don't tell very many people that. Now that I'm a brigadier general, I actually do tell people that, more.
Yeah, look where you are now.
But I ended up being a clerk typist for a unit with a special operations mission, and it opened my eyes to the mentoring from people who just had decades of experience in the intelligence agencies and in the military. And it gave me a whole new perspective, and I guess they liked me as much as I liked them. And in a shorter time than I would have received a commission going through West Point or going through ROTC or going through any other course, I was direct commissioned in the unit and made a second lieutenant from E2.
Wow.
E2 to second lieutenant.
Well, so you said that you enlisted after school. So how was school for you?
High school?
You said you were struggling to pay for college, and then you ended
college. You mean I didn't enlist after school. I enlisted because school didn't work out for me.
Gotcha.
It didn't work out. It was going the same way my high school was going. Not attending very often, not really taking it seriously. I was bored with it. I wasn't a problem kid, but I would say that I was always one of those that was sitting in an English class reading, astronomy magazines or things about other science. There were things that fascinated me, and the other 6 courses in the day did not. So a lot of F's, a lot of D's. I applauded myself when I got a C. College was very much the same way for me.
So kind of going against the grain was part of you from the beginning.
It was a consistent theme, and a lot of times I would get into a scenario and I would tend to go against the grain, always tend to be what I called a productive contrarian, which is, I got it, we're going to do it this way, but wouldn't it be better if we did it some other way? And, it used to be, privates aren't supposed to talk like that.
Yeah.
Neither are people who are washing dishes or other, So, but what I've found is that when I have adversity, and the things aren't going the way that I want, one of the things I never did was sulk. I never felt sorry for myself. I always said, okay, these people do not see what I see, and I have one of 2 choices. Go a place where they do see what I see, or work harder to convince them. The third option, which is or just go along to get along was never really one.
No, it doesn't seem like something you do.
It just didn't. No, it never really worked out for me.
Well, and I think so. It sounds like having that work ethic from the beginning, you weren't afraid to tackle those challenges when you wanted to do things differently.
No, and I never did just one thing. I'll give you an example. So I picked up, I got commissioned. I wanted infantry and special forces. I ended up getting aviation. So I went to flight school, and then I came back to my first unit at Fort Meade, Maryland. And I was, at the time we were heavy into Central America. We were doing those things. And while I was doing those things and I was doing them well, I bought a pet store in downtown D.C., in Chinatown in D.C. And
I was just there.
I was 20 years old. And
at 20 years old, you own a pet store.
That was going out of business. He agreed to finance almost all of it because he was going out of business anyway.
Yeah.
And while I was doing my military mission, and while I was going to and from what used to be Southern Command, U.S. South Command, it still is, but it's not the same organization now. While I was going from that, I opened my second store, and then my third store, and then my fourth store, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, got all the way to 12 stores, and then opened up a warehouse wholesale, and got into the wholesale business. And it's sort of at one point I was in business with one of my older brothers, and I had, so I kept trying to sort of feel it out, like how am I going to make this work? And
it was
it was a fun industry, and it proved to me I'm not really a pet person. I'm not, but
not about the animal life.
It's all business, and I did discover that because some pet stores are not well run. We did things very differently. We used to allow the charitable organizations to bring dogs in for donation, for adoption.
Yeah.
And rather than, we didn't sell dogs. We would, we had, like if we had any mammals at all, they had large runaround pens, and it was very friendly and very clean and very orderly. And one of the things we had, which was really funny, I came up with, is a lifetime guarantee on aquarium fish.
Their lifetime or the owner's lifetime?
No, the owner's lifetime. Lifetime guarantee on aquarium fish. Well, here's the thing. Most people don't realize that fish are highly profitable for a pet store. A fish that costs $2 costs them 18 cents.
Oh, wow.
So when that fish dies, you have a choice. Spend 18 cents or lose a customer. I mean, and so my thought was, heck, I mean, if I had to replace it 3 or 4 times, but each time they come in, we discuss, why did it die? Did you not dechlorinate the water? Did you not have a good enough filter? Were you not using a thermometer or aquarium heater? And you had tropical fish, and it's winter time. So there was always an opportunity, not just to upsell, but to actually help them get it right.
Yeah.
But in the course of a lifetime guarantee on a $2 fish, I don't think I ever spent $1. So it actually worked out well, and a lot of the other pet stores did not like that we did that, because they would go into other stores. Well, how come you're not doing that? And
wow.
So anyway, there was a lot of little things that I did to try to try to look at things differently in that industry. Also did a lot of things in aviation differently. We used to, sometimes we'd fly around, DEA or other law enforcement agents in the back of the helicopter, and there's not enough microphone jacks for them to talk. So the question was, could I build a little kit that they could all plug into, so they can all talk amongst themselves, and then my crew chief can pass the voice back along so that everybody can communicate in the helicopter if you've got 7 people in there. Well, the Army didn't buy such things. So I sat there and I actually drew it out, and then I started looking at all the components, and then I ordered all of from Radio Shack. Radio Shack, all the components, and I built my own kit, and then we tested it, and then I submitted that to the Army. And I understand after I stopped flying, they actually started issuing those out.
Really?
Which was pretty cool.
So I want to dig into that more a little bit later. Just the military not necessarily buying what they need, or making it difficult to get what they need. I want to hit on that pretty hard. But tell me about what it's like being a test pilot, because you got to be an adrenaline junkie to do that.
It's actually not as exciting as Top Gun would have you believe. For the most part, you're testing something in particular. You're testing an implementation of software and new night vision goggles. You're testing new instruments. You're testing, you're actually just, beating up a helicopter to determine whether or not a new type of starter generator or some other component can produce better performance. So the thing about it is that you have to do things the exact same way over and over again, because you have to create the exact same flight envelope or conditions that you did previously so that you can tell what the difference is. So the amount of attention to detail that you really had to give was pretty significant. And I had the luxury of joining the Army and joining aviation when all of the Vietnam era pilots were still serving. They were all CW4s, they were all senior guys. They had 20,000 flight hours, in Vietnam. These guys had more experience. The average Vietnam era pilot still serving in the Army had more flight hours than like 8 non-combined. It was just incredible. And they were amazing teachers and amazingly patient with me. But I did learn, one of my goals was to be able to, there's no cup holder. There's no cup holder in military aircraft. And one of the things I used to like to do is I used to like to take a cup of coffee and I like to set it up on the dash and just make dang sure that I could do whatever I needed to do and never move that cup.
That's impressive.
Didn't always work out. A couple times.
You catch it in the lap.
Going down the plexiglass on the bottom, on the front.
Yeah.
But just to see if you could do it, even for a couple of minutes when you're, just being that steady, and especially in helicopters, which is what I was flying. Military helicopters are not, they're strong, they're robust, they're reliable, but they wouldn't have come in and tried that, because I always defend what I do. I do it for a good reason. I do it because it's right. I do it because it's for the good of the taxpayer or the good of the service. But when I left, it was probably weeks before the IT governance.
So you were into flying helicopters and owning pet stores, and somehow you got into technology.
The reason we created Equitus was because in the years of SC2, we went to all of these different agencies, and we would take a look at where they were in development of advanced analytics, advanced software, and no two were the same. Everyone was doing their own thing. It was all people instead of technology, and the people in one organization at a base were doing something very similar to the people in another organization in the base, and they were each reinventing the wheel all on their own. And I thought to myself, if a company could take advanced analytics and commoditize it to where it could be delivered like a toaster, and I used to joke about analytics toasters, that if you could take an AI platform and just deliver it, there'd be a huge market for that. And so we took some of the money that we had made consulting, and we built our first product, and it was called HTAS, the Human Terrain Analysis System. And what it was a private system. It was pretty big. It wasn't really an appliance. It was a ridiculous sized toaster. Okay, but the thing is that what it did was it harvested, collected, analyzed, structured social media, and gave you all the tools you needed to be able to analyze it without talking to any other system in the world.
Wow.
And we thought, wow, the military's going to love this. And sure enough, they loved the idea of it, but when it came time for budgets, they had a lot of budgets for labor, and they really didn't have any budgets for stuff.
So they didn't know how to buy it?
Technology, no. Technology by the government is bought in forms of labor. It's
So-
not bought in forms of stuff.
To play devil's advocate, is there any benefit in the labor and the specialization, or is it just inefficiency?
No, a lot of it has to do with legislation that predates you or me, or buying practices that predate either of us. As a practical matter, if you want a car, you don't pay for it in hours. I mean, unless it was a special car.
Yeah.
If it's a special car, it's truly going to do something no other car has done, like the postal vehicle. The postal vehicle, is very unique. You build that from the ground up as a postal vehicle, but Enterprise Rent-A-Car doesn't build its own cars.
No.
And neither does any other car rental agency or the government, for that matter, unless it's super specialized. IT is not specialized. IT is generalized. You are dealing in open source data or unstructured data or structured data, or you are dealing in pixel movements in the form of video, recorded or streaming video. You are dealing in classes of data that are no different, whether it's intelligence or whether it's an insurance company or whether it's a barber shop. It's the same. So the thing is that they continue to go it alone in the IT sector when small firms in Silicon Valley or in Clearwater have much more advanced tech than $800 million programs that have been around for half a decade. So the idea behind Equitus after the failing of HTAS, which was not a technical failure, we just couldn't sell it, was to do the typical Rob Guidry thing. Let's double down and build more of them. So, and we refused to go back their way, and we built Equitus Text Analytics. And they still didn't know how to buy that, so we went out and built Equitus Intelligence. And we still didn't know how to buy that, so we built Equitus Visual Ops. And then we got into video analytics, and then we started. And what's funny is that in the time that we have used our own private funds to develop a complete family of advanced, AI and machine learning, edge analytics systems that literally I could, go grab Michael and we could take 2 Pelican cases and wheel them into any government intelligence agency, and it's way more advanced than most of what they have. And the time that we took to do that, they've evolved as well. And I think they're coming to the realization that it's just not working. I mean, with the exception of a recent government contract where they spent $800 million on bodies for artificial intelligence rather than spending $100 million to buy artificial intelligence, which makes absolutely no sense to me, but okay. With the exception of that, they're starting to get it. That, not everything is special. Video analytics, using machine learning to understand videos is the same whether you are Google, Amazon, Equitus, or any of these companies. And it doesn't have to be military grade.
Yeah.
It needs to be advanced. It needs to work. It needs to be reliable. So the idea behind Equitus was to use commercial money, private funds, to build in advance a family of intelligence analytics systems such that we would be where we are today, which is uniquely positioned. I think we're the only company in the world that can deliver advanced intelligence systems in 30 days that are truly edge.
Yeah.
They're self-contained. I could put one on a military vehicle. I don't know anybody else could do that. But that's only because we went it alone to do the build, and we hired a lot of really smart talent here, people who are free thinking, and then we also brought in some military experienced people who also shared our frustration with acquisition, and the Dan O'Shea's and the Mark Campbells and the other folks who came in here who all were in the fight. We ran fusion cells, we ran operations, we did things, and we realized what our shortfalls were, so we had a passion to get it right. And the beauty, without being constrained by government regulation, in that we're paying for it ourselves, we do what we want, is that we built what we wanted. And I like that position.
Can you talk about the operational issues that you were looking to solve? What are the information operations, missions that are going on that aren't being solved properly because they don't have the right
It's a fine
technology.
example of this. And we have some of the best intelligence analysts in the world in the United States government. They are sharp. And especially, you look at a young Marine or a young Army soldier, he's 85, and he's an intelligence analyst. These guys and gals are thinking on their feet, and they're amazing. The thing is the way they're having to put together a picture to get intelligence is they're having to read something, then they're having to read something else, then they're having to go through and search and find some other things, and the correlation's happening in their head. And they're coming up with the answer, giving leadership the answer, but then they're on to another mission and everything they learned is gone.
Yeah.
We don't have machines. We don't have machines that are systematically learning and correlating and building a picture so that if I'm an intel analyst and I'm working a 12-hour day, and they often do, and I need to go get some sleep, the next analyst can't pick up where they were because most of the non-obvious correlation is in their head. So Equitus is about taking disparate types and classes of data and analyzing them and bringing them into a common framework that allows that data to commingle and inform the other data. And one of the best, I'm gonna butcher this quote, but Jeff Jonas, really smart guy. If you've never looked him up, you should look him up. Jeff said that data needs to find data to find meaning.
What do you mean by that?
Let's say I have an example. I know that Publix grocery store is at this location. I also know that, hey, there's a fire at that address. Oh, wait a minute. That fire that's at that address is at the Publix store. It's the data finding data, because you can't put that together unless you know that if the only two pieces of information you have is there's a fire at an address and then Publix is at an address, and each of those two facts is known by two different people, you never get, oh my God, there's a fire at the Publix. It's just that simple. When you start dealing with a military intelligence problem, you're talking about thousands of facts. And these, patriots, I can't call them kids, because these are soldiers and Marines, and they're young, much younger than me, but they're having to hang on to tidbits of information in their head to put together really complex patterns of life. And I just don't think we're helping them in the way we ought to be helping them.
They don't have
we
the
give
right
them
tools.
Well, they have tools. Let me give you an example. If I gave you a tool that told you where all the fires were, and then I gave you another tool that told you where all the grocery stores are, you still are the only place that knows that the fire's at the grocery store. We give them lots of tools. We don't give them a system. We don't give them a platform. They've got countless tools. They got more tools from doing more things, and the tools don't talk to each other. And there is no real experience in the DoD for building enterprise intelligence systems that are repeatable, that are open architecture, that are open standard, that are interchangeable with other components, because every government contractor, and they're great contractors, they're building it for their one client, and the other one's building it for that one client, and the other one's building it for the one client. So there's a ton of experience, but it's just not the right kind of experience. So anytime that and these are great companies, Booz Allen winning the artificial intelligence contract, they're a great company, but I didn't know they owned any artificial intelligence, and I don't think they do. Maybe they do, but that's not what they were paid for. They were paid for their approach to hiring humans. But humans aren't artificial intelligence. They're wetware. Wetware is what goes on in our head. And you can't build $800 million, $800 billion. You can't catch up with the consumer market in artificial intelligence ever.
So you're telling me that the military would rather buy the people who are going to build the technology instead of just buying the technology?
That's correct. And some of it, look, and the decision makers are good people, and they're bound by a lot of legislation that needs to change. I give you a fine example of that. If I go to Best Buy and I find exactly what I needed, I can't buy it. Because, well, if it's more than $5,000,
Yeah.
I can't buy it if I'm the government.
Yeah.
I have to put a bid out, make sure everybody, including people who have never even heard of a widget like this, can compete, and I have to set aside a certain amount of it for different, there's economically disadvantaged, there's this other thing. I have, 90 pages of things that have nothing to do with buying a tech widget. And meanwhile, the company that has the tech widget is like, hey, look, I'm in the consumer market. I'm selling billions of dollars in the consumer market, and if you think that for a $30 million contract I'm going to get involved in that buffoonery, I'm not.
No, thank you.
And I've had companies. When we were SC2, I had countless Silicon Valley companies call me, going, "Hey, we think we want to sell to the government," and then I'd give them a layout of what was required, and they'd be like, "We don't think we want to sell to the government. We are completely happy selling to every retailer in the world, but not the commissary." Okay, got it.
Yeah. Well, can that be fixed?
Legislation. We have to. COTS cannot be a 4-letter word. In other words, it's still going to be 4 letters.
Yeah.
But commercial off the shelf can't be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do is we need to use the humans to modify it to make it military.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to buy the basic thing and then make the changes. We don't have to write it from scratch.
So you buy this.
That's where Equitus comes in.
Yeah.
Everything we build, it could be 100% solution. We can deliver 100% solution. But what we do is we make that top 10% completely erasable, so that if you're a defense contractor working for the Air Force, an Air Force intelligence agency, and you buy an Equitus system, you can customize the visualizations. You can change some of the analytics and algorithms. Heck, you can take the Equitus logos off. You can put your own logo on it and go forward and make it your own. Now, we still get paid for the underlying technology. That's ours. But instead of it being 100 or 95% labor, 5% stuff, which is what artificial intelligence looks like today, it's more like 30% stuff and 70% their labor. Now, you do that, you'd have AI going across the DoD like a heartbeat. But they don't set their budgets that way. They set their budgets, 10% stuff, 90% labor. You just can't get technical advancements that way. And all of these, good idea organizations we stand up, and all of these, let's cooperate with industry, let's do, it is not creating a seamless flow of advanced tech from the private sector into the military. It happens. A few of them get through.
Yeah.
Microsoft Office. We finally have gone with Microsoft Office across the military. I don't like the fact that it's a monopoly, but geez, it works.
Yeah, it works.
It works. And, anybody can go buy Microsoft shares.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes it, fair and competitive. I don't know how else to say it, because I really don't want something that doesn't work.
Sure. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's about getting things done, right?
It is. And that whole Jedi thing for the government cloud, similar thing. Again, that's something that, it's going to go Microsoft, and I'm fine with that. Now, in the future, maybe it'll go, Oracle. Maybe it'll go Amazon. Who knows where it'll go in the future? But the point is, I don't mind going with one company for a little bit if it allows us to advance. But the role that I think Equitus plays is we're in a space alone for a need that's real, and for a need that's significant. And the need that's real is everything can't go on the cloud. Not everything goes on the cloud.
Why not?
Well, I'll give you an example. If you had shut down all the grocery stores and you went straight to Amazon shopping, which a lot of people have, you'd have not been able to have toilet paper for the last 3 or 4 months. The reality is you have put all of your reliance on another party in another place who treats you just like any other customer, meaning you can't see them face to face. You can't even talk to a human. So the problem is when you put your data in the cloud, if that cloud ever becomes unavailable, or God forbid we go to war and we get jammed, guess what? The moment you get jammed,
done. You
have nothing. I mean, you're back to rubbing two sticks together to create a fire, or I don't know what people are going to do.
Yeah.
How they're going to. We're in the business of bringing analytics back to the edge, and I'll tell you something. There is more computing power on a cell phone today than existed on the space shuttle when it first took flight. And what do we use a cell phone for? We use it for a browser and a few web apps.
Looking at Tinder.
It's got all this compute power on it that's completely going to waste.
Yeah.
It's got really fast processors. Yeah, you know what you use those processors for?
Video games,
Instagram
right?
photo filters. Because that's really all they do. The other 99% of the time, they sit there. Who's writing software to go on the phone that's actually taking the data from the sensors on the phone and analyzing it locally? Nobody. And the reason is the money's in the cloud by getting your data in the cloud, and they make money off of the data and the knowledge that they gain of all of us. And I'll say it, for the most part, they're not even American companies anymore. They're global. They're absolutely global. These are functionally cyber states. I'm not, there's no conspiracy theory here. The reality is that Apple will do with China what Apple wants to do with China, and the U.S. has nothing to say about it. And if the U.S. government ever decides it wants to say something about it, Apple will become I don't know, they'll move to Mongolia.
An Irish company.
Yeah, become an Irish company again. They can all do this. All of them can do this.
Yeah.
And in fact, the top 5 cloud companies have a greater GDP than the whole of Africa. Each one.
Wow.
Well, yeah, they have complete control over information we see. They could, if they wanted to, they could do anything, whatever they want. My point is that somebody has to be in the business of bringing analytics back closer. That's the business of Equitus, and that's what we set out to do. And we've done it, which is a pretty good. It's a pretty good position, we think, to be in looking forward.
That's where we are right now. What does the future look like? We saw Sophic up here. They were talking about COTS. They were talking about edge analytics. What does the future hold?
It's funny, and I'm glad that they were talking about these, that the special operations leadership is talking about these things. 5 years ago, we were talking about COTS, and we were talking about edge analytics with them. And they were focused on cloud. I think that now that they have adopted cloud, they're beginning to realize that complete and utter dependency on others that are far away and that see you as one of many customers is probably not going to get you what you want. I liken it to Metro Rail. I love Metro Rail. Cloud is like Metro Rail. It'll get you where it's going. It'll get you somewhere with everybody else. It's much more efficient, it's much more cost effective, but it doesn't go where you want to go. I mean, if I wanted to go from my house to here, I needed a car.
Sure.
The thing is that what if Ford, GM, Toyota, Hyundai, and all of them just focused on Metro Rail and stopped making cars? I'm actually proud to be in the tech car business, so to speak, and that we're building things that allow you to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, where you want to do them. And where do I think this is going? I think it's going to where it should have gone from the very beginning. A hybrid cloud environment. Let the cloud do what the cloud can do best.
Absolutely. Well, Rob, some great insight. It was really cool hearing where you started, and this has been a common theme. It's people going against the grain, really make the changes and provide innovation. And that's something that you've done for the U.S. government, for this company, and for me. So
thank you. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks, everybody.